My name is Abigail Harper, and I never thought a neighborhood dispute could rip my world apart. I was 16, a junior in high school, juggling algebra homework and the occasional crush, when my life turned into something out of a dystopian novel. It started with a cracked birdhouse and ended with the FBI storming our sleepy subby VY Shown of Willow Creek. This is the story of how my father, Daniel Harper, was arrested by the self-proclaimed HOA enforcers, how a corrupt empire crumbled under its own weight, and how I learned that even a teenager can fight back against tyranny. Willow Creek was the kind of place you'd see on a postcard. Neat rows of brick houses, emerald lawns, and mailboxes painted to match the shutters. It was a suburban paradise, sir. So it seemed. My dad always said a home wasn't just walls and a roof. It was a sanctuary where a family could breathe, dream, and grow. He lived that belief. Every spring, he'd repaint our porch swing a cheerful yellow. He'd tinker in the garage, building birdhouses for the finches that flitted through our yard. And when the neighbors stopped by, he'd offer them a slice of his famous pecan pie, warm from the oven. That was Dad steady, kind, a man who saw beauty in the small things. But beneath Willow Creek's polished surface lurked a shadow, the Homeowners Association, or HOA. What started as a modest group of retirees fussing over hedge heights had morphed into something sinister. By the time I was old enough to notice, the HOA had its own fleet of black SUV sleek, menacing vehicles that replaced the old golf carts, and a squad of enforcement officers who strutted around in gray uniforms, badges gleaming like they were real cops. They'd slap fines on your door for a weed in your flower bed or a basketball hoop 2 inches too low. Miss a payment? They'd threaten liens on your house. Complain? Good luck they had the ear of the local magistrate, a wiry man named Judge Hargrove, who rubber-stamped their every move. Dad had always been a thorn in their side. It began with that birdhousey or rustic little thing he'd nailed to our oak tree. The HOA claimed it violated some obscure rule about non-approved structures. Dad laughed it off at first, but when a pink citation appeared on our doorstep demanding its removal, he dug in his heels. "It's a birdhouse, not a billboard," he'd said, shaking his head. "They're attracting wildlife," the notice read, as if sparrows were a public menace. To Dad, that was the whole point in VYing nature into our corner of the world. He refused to take it down. That was just the beginning. Over the next year, he started asking questions at HOA meetings. Why were dues doubling every 6 months? Where was the money going? The neighborhood pool was still cracked and empty. The playground swings rusted through. He'd come home fuming, telling Mom and me how the board dodged his questions with tight smiles and vague promises. "Something's rotten, Sarah," he'd say to my mother, his voice low but firm. "They're hiding something." I didn't think much of it then. I was too busy with school, my part-time job at the ice cream shop, and texting my best friend, Mia, about the cute barista at Brewhaven. But I should have paid attention, because one crisp October morning, everything changed. It was a Saturday, the kind where the air smells like fallen leaves and chimney smoke. I was sprawled on my bed, earbuds in, scribbling notes for a history project, when a thunderous pounding shook the house. It wasn't a knock, it was a battering ram of sound, relentless and angry. I yanked out my earbuds and bolted downstairs, my heart thudding. Dad was already at the door, Mom clutching his arm, her face pale. I peeked around the corner and saw them. 6 men in those gray uniforms, badges glinting under the porch light. The leader, a broad-shouldered guy with a buzz cut and a sneer, held a clipboard like it was a weapon. His name tag read, "Officer Brantley." "Daniel Harper," Brantley barked. "You're in violation of multiple HOA ordinances and have failed to pay outstanding fines. We're authorized to detain you." Dad stepped onto the porch, hands raised in a calming gesture. "Hold on, what violations? I've paid every fee we agreed to. You keep jacking up the amounts without explanation. I've asked for records, and you've given me nothing." Brantley's eyes flicked to me, cold and calculating, then back to Dad. "You've been warned. This ends now." Before Dad could say another word, 2 of the goons grabbed him, wrenching his arms behind his back. Plastic zip ties snapped around his wrist cheek, flimsy things that somehow made the scene more surreal. Mom gasped, a hand flying to her mouth, and I screamed, a raw, jagged sound that tore through the morning quiet. "Stop it," I shouted, lunging forward, but Mom pulled me back, her nails digging into my arm. Dad twisted his head, meeting my eyes. "Abby, it's okay," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Stay with your mom." But it wasn't okay. His hazel eyes, usually warm and crinkled with laughter, were shadowed with something I'd never seen before: fear. They dragged him to one of those black SUVs, its engine growling like a predator. The neighbors watched Mrs. Callahan peering through her curtains, Mr. Ortiz frozen on his lawn, rake in hand. No one said a word. The vehicle peeled out, tires screeching, and left Mom and me standing there, the autumn wind biting at our skin. By nightfall, the rumors started. My phone buzzed with texts from Mia. "Heard your dad stole HOA money. Is it true?" Then from Jake, a kid from my chem class. "They're saying he threatened the board with a gun." Each message was wilder than the last, a wildfire of lies spreading through Willow Creek. I wanted to scream that it was all garbage, that Dad was the good guy here, but who'd believe me? The HOA had already painted him as the VY lane. Mom spent hours on the phone, calling lawyers, the sheriff's office, even the township clerk. Every answer was the same. "It's an HOA matter. We don't interfere." The local cops, a lazy bunch who'd rather sip coffee at the diner than patrol, had long ago ceded control to the HOA's private muscle. We were alone. Days bled into a week. Dad was being held in the HOA's detention suite, a converted storage room in the community center next to the ping-pong table nobody used. They wouldn't let us see him, citing ongoing investigations. Mom aged a decade in those 7 days, her brown hair streaked with new gray, her hands trembling as she brewed endless pots of coffee she never drank. I barely slept, my dreams haunted by Dad's face, those zip ties cutting into his wrists. I couldn't just sit there. If no one else would help, I'd find a way. I locked myself in my room with my laptop and started digging. I scoured state laws, HOA regulations, anything I could find. What I uncovered made my stomach churn. HOAs had insane power. Some could foreclose on homes, impose fines without oversight, even detain residents under vague bylaws. But there were limits. If they crossed into fraud or false imprisonment, federal law could intervene. I just needed proof. The HOA was run by Evelyn Voss, a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a corporate boardroom, sharp cheekbones, platinum hair, swept into a flawless bun, and eyes that could freeze you mid-sentence. She'd been chairwoman for 5 years, turning the board into her personal fiefdom. Whispers around the neighborhood said her husband owned half the commercial real estate in town, and her brother was a state senator. Money and influence dripped from her every word. Under her reign, the enforcement team had grown from a couple of nosy retirees to a dozen ex-cops and bouncers, all eager to flex their authority. Dad had gotten too close to something big. I found a folder in his desk bank statements he'd somehow obtained, showing HOA dues funneled into an offshore account. Tens of thousands of dollars, siphoned off while our streets crumbled and the community garden turned to dust. He confronted Voss at the last meeting, while VYing those papers, demanding answers. 2 days later, they took him. I had my spark. If I could get this to the right people, maybe I could save him. But who? Local lawyers laughed us off or quoted fees we couldn't afford. The sheriff hung up on Mom mid-sentence. Desperate, I drafted an email to the FBI's regional office in Chicago, attaching scans of Dad's EVY Denke, a timeline of the arrest, and a plea that poured out of me like blood. My father's being held prisoner by a corrupt HOA. Please help us. I hit send, my hands shaking, and prayed. Weeks dragged on, and nothing came back. The HOA tightened its grip. A notice appeared on our door, threatening to seize our house for defamation after I posted about Dad's arrest on X. Mom stopped eating, her voice cracking as she begged faceless bureaucrats over the phone. I trudged through school like a ghost, ignoring the whispers and stares. At night, I'd lie awake, promising Dad's shadow in my mind that I wouldn't give up. Then, on a rainy Thursday, everything shifted. "Mister, Delaney, a quiet widower who lived 2 houses down, slipped Mom a note at the mailbox. FBI's sniffing around, it read. Your husband found something big money laundering, maybe worse. My pulse raced. Could it be true? I dove back into the HOA's public financials glossy PDFs on their website, all too perfect. No pothole repairs, no pool upgrades, yet the numbers balanced like magic. It screamed cover up. That night, a knock jolted us from our haze. I opened the door to 2 men in dark suits, rain dripping from their coats. Abigail Harper, the older one asked, his voice gravelly but kind. He had graying hair and deep-set eyes that seemed to see right through me. I'm Special Agent Kessler, FBI. This is Agent Ruiz. We got your email. My knees nearly buckled. Mom stumbled into the room, clutching a dish towel like a lifeline. We sat in the Lee V.Y. Ing room, the agent's notebooks filling with our story of refine, every threat, every second of Dad's arrest. Kessler's pen paused when I handed him Dad's bank statements. This is serious, he said, exchanging a glance with Ruiz. We've been tracking financial irregularities in this county for months. Your father might have cracked it open. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. The next morning, Willow Creek woke to a quiet invasion. Black SUVs, real ones. Not the HOA's knockoffs rolled through the streets, their tinted windows reflecting the overcast sky. No sirens, no fanfare, just a slow, deliberate presence that set the neighborhood buzzing. I watched from my window as the HOA's enforcers scrambled, their SUVs darting around like panicked ants. Evelyn Voss was spotted pacing the community center's parking lot, phone pressed to her ear, her cool facade cracking. By noon, word spread that the FBI's regional director, a man named Victor Grayson, was in town. I'd seen him on TV once, testifying in a corruption case, all silver-haired, with a voice that could command a hurricane. If he was here, this wasn't just a routine check. Something massive was brewing. Mom and I were told to stay put, but I couldn't. I slipped out, hiding behind the azaleas across from the community center. An hour later, the doors burst open. Voss stormed out, flanked by Brantley and another enforcer, her face a mask of fury. Then I saw him, Dad, stepping into the drizzle, escorted by 2 agents and a man who could only be Grayson. His suit was impeccable, his posture unyielding, and when he spoke, the air seemed to still. Evelyn Voss, Grayson said, holding up a stack of papers. These are federal warrants for your arrest and the seizure of HOA records. You're under investigation for fraud, money laundering, and unlawful detention. Voss sputtered, her voice shrill. This is outrageous. I'll have my lawyers. Your lawyers can meet you at the field office. Grayson cut in, nodding to the agents. They cuffed her, her wrists snapping into real handcuffs this time. Brantley tried to bluster, but one look from Grayson silenced him. The enforcer's bravado melted as Ruiz slapped a warrant in his hands. I couldn't wait. I broke from the bushes and ran, slamming into Dad with a sob. He hugged me tight, his flannel shirt damp and smelling of mildew from that awful cell. Abby, he whispered, his voice breaking. Mom joined us, and for a moment, the world was just us, Hake and scarred but whole. The fallout was seismic. The FBI tore through the HOA's books, uncovering a web of corruption that stretched beyond Willow Creek. Voss had been laundering money for a real estate syndicate, her husband's firm at the heart of it. Dues meant for streetlights and sidewalks had funded private jets and beach houses. The enforcers were indicted. Brantley got 10 years for false imprisonment. Others flipped, spilling secrets for lighter sentences. Voss faced decades behind bars, her empire reduced to a cautionary tale. Willow Creek reeled. Neighbors who'd ignored us brought casseroles, their apologies quiet but sincere. Dad was free, but the ordeal left Mark's nightmares that woke him shouting, a wariness in his smile. I felt it too, a simmering anger at everyone who'd let this happen. But as the trials unfolded, as Voss's smug face turned desperate on the stand, that rage softened into something else, resolve. Grayson became our unexpected ally. He checked in, offering counseling resources and a promise that Dad's voice would be heard in court. One evening, as I raked leaves, he stopped by. "You're strong, Abigail," he said, his tone warm. "What you did gathering evy denke, reaching out, that's rare." I shrugged, kicking at a pile of leaves. "I just wanted my dad back." "You got more than that," he replied. "You gave your community a chance to start over." He was right. We stayed in Willow Creek, not as VY Tims, but as builders. Dad led a push for a new council, transparent, democratic, no uniforms or fines. The birdhouse went back up, a quiet symbol of our fight. And me? I found a purpose. I'd study law, maybe join the FBI someday, make sure no one else endured what we had. The scars linger, Dad's quiet moments, my occasional fury, but they're proof we serve VY Ved. Willow Creek isn't perfect, but it's ours again. And every time I hear birds chirping at that birdhouse, I know we won. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.